again. And also, if you see the console is giving me this as the system. This is the toString method, default toString method, and this is the hash code. Hash code is the address of this memory. So I will use this, and I will maybe store it into Notepad or somewhere. So I've stored it into a Notepad. The reason why I'm storing is that I will explain later. So let's go back to test deserialization method. So again, I will create alt insert test method, test de-serialize. Okay, test de-serialize. Okay, and again, I will give it a better display name. So create this method and test basic deserialization for Java Pojo. Now let's start to read this file using object inputStream.readObject and reconstructed.object. So I will create again the new file inputStream, and I will pass this file which we have used before to serialize it, right? And let me, okay, file not found exception because it's a valid exception, check that exception. So next I will use a buffer input stream, right, as a wrapper over it. And finally, a new object input stream as the final wrapper over it. And showing me some errors, so Alt enter, add exception. Okay, IO is there. And let me little bit, okay. So same as what we did here in try resources, we'll do the similar. So I will call it as final where object input stream is equal to this, okay, and wrap it over try with resources, and let's finally do it, right? So I will use ois.readObject. So read object, okay. You see what's the problem? Add exception to methods, class not found exception, okay. And I will actually, because by default it will give me the object, because if you see this, Control Q, fetching documentation. So it will normally just return an object, and after this, we need to cast it back to our market data with no fields, okay. Okay, so we have this, that it will return us an object back of this, okay, and it also throws class not found exception and IO section. So that's why we have to handle this. That's why we have to cast it back to say this, okay, and then I will store it into a variable called as fromSerialize, okay. So we read the object, we cast it back to our market data with no fields in this object now, okay. Now, before I actually do any assertion checks, so before that, I will just print it out, okay, as out, and I will after serialization. And again, I will print out this object. Even if it's null, it doesn't matter. But we have to assert, our basic assertion is that we should be able to read this object back from our file if it's all good. And then it should be not null. This object which is there, it should be not null. Okay. And from serialize. Control Alt L will reformat our code. So this is our basic assertion that we should be able to read it back. Now let me run this. As we see this test case also worked fine. Let me copy this and compare it with our notepad. So guys, this is a very very important point to note here, is that if you see the hash code of this, the hash codes are different. Before we serialize that object and after we deserialize it and reconstruct the object, it's actually creating the copy of the original object. If it was the same object, this hash code would be same. But here in this case, the hash codes are not same because this deserialization, it will always create a copy of the original object. It will not create the same object unless we customize the serialization, which we'll cover in our later chapters. So guys, let's revise what we have done. So we created our first chapter package, chapter 1 introduction in both source main Java and test Java packages. And we created this market data with no fields, which means we don't have any private fields members here, which is our very basic first case. And we used implement serializable to make it a serializable class. And then we started writing the test cases. We created a file at a private member of this test class. And then we, in the setup method, we created this file in our test resources, okay, using this path variable. And then we created a new file only when it doesn't exist. And then we wrote our first serialization class unit test, where we used ObjectInputStream to write this object. And in the test de-serialize, we read that object back from the serialized file. And then we checked that it's not null. And we also verified that the object which was written is not exactly same when we deserialize it, because it's just a copy of the original object. So this is all about our chapter 1. In the next chapter, which will be our second chapter, we will cover serialization with memory buffer, which means that we will serialize this object into stream of bytes, and then we will use this memory as a buffer, and then deserialize it back into stream of bytes and final object. So see you all in the next video.